Well, hey guys, wanted to bring you all another video on the Range Rover. Wanted to bring you guys some updated impressions on it now that I've had a little bit more time to drive the car. I was going to put it in the rocks because Range Rover things, but as you can see by the mud, that really wasn't going to happen. So anyways, just going to go over some pros and cons that we've figured out on the car. Things we like, things we don't like, and yeah, so we'll go ahead and get the camera set up and we'll get started. Alrighty, so in typical smart key fashion, foot on the brake, push the engine button, the engine start button to start, and then to put it in gear, and just squeeze the little trigger, pull it all the way back for drive, and you're off. So first of all, I wanted to wish you guys a happy Easter. I'm recording this on a very dreary Easter Sunday. So happy Easter to you guys. I'll try to have this up by the end of today. And while I have the opportunity, I wanted to demonstrate a really neat feature. As you can see, or as I hope you can see, we're facing down a pretty large hill. So I'm going to go ahead and engage hill descent control. And I'm not touching anything. The only thing I have my hand on is the steering wheel. And as you can see, the car is bringing itself down the hill on its own, using the car's brakes. And one thing that's really cool about this is you get this little display in the center LCD display, and it's got like a little meter, and in the meter there's a green notch. And the car's goal is to keep the car's speed at the green notch. So of course, if I put my foot on the gas, the car is going to take off, but the second I let my foot off, I'm not on the brakes, and you can see the meter trying to bring the car speed back down to where it should be, or where the car thinks it should be anyways. So now that we're basically done with the hill, I'll go ahead and disengage hill descent control and take over myself. So like I said, really neat feature on the Range Rover. I believe that's standard equipment. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to double check on that. Really enjoyed it. And if you see me using my phone, I have a list put together, so I'm not texting and driving, I promise. So just to kind of give you guys some updated impressions on the car, I'll go ahead and start off with what we do like about the car. And the first thing is how good the SUV looks. It's an absolutely fantastic looking SUV, and in my opinion is probably the best looking SUV on the market. But of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some of you may not like the exterior styling. I personally do. I think it looks fantastic. I really like the white with the black top. Really glad we made that choice, and I really like the 22-inch rims on it as well. I believe these rims are about a $3,000 option according to the window sticker. So they're not cheap at all, but they are really nice rims, and they're wrapped in really nice tires, Continental Cross Contact or something. Much better than the Conti Pro contacts that we all know experiences with those don't go well. Next thing we like about the car is how quiet it is. We're on a pretty crappy road surface here. It's just a black top with oil and gravel overlay, and it sounds really quiet in here. It's not making a lot of road noise. The tires are quiet. This car just does a very good job of isolating what's going on the outside from what's going on inside here. There is a little bit of engine noise that comes through, but it's not bad engine noise at all. And that brings me on to my next point about the car that we really like, is how good the engine sounds for just a V6. Of course, this is the 3-liter supercharged V6 compared to the ZF 8-speed automatic. And engine sounds really nice. It's really quiet when you're cruising, but when you put your foot into it, it really opens up and you start to hear it, which I really like. You do get a little supercharger whine in there as well. They tried to, you can definitely tell that they tried to quiet down the supercharger whine, but I mean, I don't really see why. I really like the sound of a supercharger. I did open the hood and give it a few revs a couple days ago, and it sounds absolutely ridiculously cool. You just get that supercharger whine induction noise, and it sounds fantastic. So I wish they wouldn't have made that quite as quiet as it is, but I mean, if it was that big of a deal, there's ways to change that, but it's really not that big of a deal for us. So beautiful exterior styling, how quiet the car is, and the engine sound. Next point that we really like about the car is how easy it is to see out of. A lot of SUVs now, one that comes to mind is the Range Rover Evoque, which this is basically the Evoque's big brother, but that's another topic for another time. But the visibility in this is fantastic. But SUVs such as like the Evoque and stuff like that really don't have that great of visibility. It's just very hard to see out of them because of the sloping roofline, but this, you don't really have that problem. The side mirrors are absolutely huge, so you get, they're very tall. They're not all that wide, but they're very tall. So you get a very wide view down the side of the car, which is nice. I appreciate that a lot. I'm glad that the mirrors are big. The blind spot warning helps. You've got this huge front windshield. Speaking of the windshield, one thing that does take a little bit of getting used to is the front, or the hood actually is lower than the dashboard line of this car, which is a little strange, but it's really not that big of a deal once you get used to it. I'm used to it at this point, and it doesn't bother me at all. We'll go ahead and do a little acceleration here. That was at about 3/4 throttle, so as you can see, the car gets up out of its own way without any trouble at all. 340 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque doesn't sound like a lot, but this car delivers its power very well. They did a super nice job on the power delivery of this for the most part, but we'll go over that in a little bit. But like I was saying, visibility in this is really good, super easy to see out of, and that was a big selling factor too. The Jaguar really was not easy to see out of. It was easier than some cars that have the sloping roof lines and stuff like that, but this was just much easier to see out of, and the raised ride height, of course, is very nice as well. Another thing, like I said, that we like is decent power. It doesn't have an overwhelming amount of power. It's nowhere near as fast as the Jaguar was by any means, but this is not a slow car. I wouldn't for a second call this thing slow. I really think it has just enough power for what it is. My dad thinks it should have a little bit more power, but it really doesn't need it, honestly. It does just fine with what it has. Another thing that we really like about it is how well the car handles. You just get very reassured when you're driving it that this is a really nice handling SUV. The body roll is kept to a minimum by the adaptive suspension. It has a system in it to actually fight body roll, which I think is really cool. It's just a very reassuring and sporty SUV to drive. The ride does get a little choppy if you're going over a very rough surface, but it's really not too bad, especially like on a smooth surface like I'm on right now. It's just extremely well controlled, very smooth, very quiet, very nice car that I would not hesitate for 1 second to do a road trip in cross country. Like I said, the stable handling is really good. The reassurance of having all-time all-wheel drive is really nice too. These tires have not slipped on us once under braking or acceleration, so that says a lot about the brakes on the car, as well as the all-wheel drive system putting the power down extremely well. I'm super pleased with how this car puts its power down. The all-wheel drive system is just fantastic. Then of course, if you want to go more hardcore, you can play with the terrain response system and go and do whatever it is you might want to do with that. The brakes, like I just mentioned, are fantastic on this car. We did a few tests of the brakes earlier this morning, and these things grab. Of course, they use a softer pad and a softer rotor, like I've mentioned before, but it's really just an extremely reassuring car when you stomp on the brakes. A lot of big SUVs feel really heavy and don't like slowing down, but this one doesn't put up a fight at all. It's absolutely no trouble. So I'm extremely pleased with how well the brakes work on the Range Rover Sport. And these aren't even upgraded brakes. You can get bigger brakes than this. And these are just the base HSE brakes, and they're phenomenal. Another thing that we like about the car, and this is one that I personally like, is the transmission. This thing is phenomenal. Super smooth when you want it to be. Just a very well done transmission when you're driving conservatively. And then when you decide to be a little more ridiculous with the car, once you slap it over into sport mode and start shifting it yourself, it just bangs off the shifts. Almost feels like a dual clutch. It's not dual clutch levels of quick by any means, but it is an extremely fast and responsive transmission. It just doesn't have the sharpness of the dual clutch, but it really does change gears very well. One thing that I've really grown to like about this car is how well the interior is laid out on it. Everything is right where you expect it to be. Climate controls down here, touchscreen interface up here, cruise control, wipers, turn signals, fog lights, multimedia controls on the steering wheel, heated steering wheel. Just everything is right where you would think it would be. And I really like that a lot. It's just very ergonomic, super easy to find things, and it's a very stylish layout too, I think. It's very minimalistic. There's very few buttons. A lot of things are controlled through the touchscreen, which brings me on to my next point. On the Jaguar, the touchscreen was absolutely awful. It just was, it was frustrating to use, to say the least. And now you have this one, which is not the quickest, but it is very responsive, super quick to do what you tell it to, much better than the Jaguar, although it is the exact same interface. They've just sped up the processing speed a lot. Moving on, from the interior, another thing I really like about the car is the headlights on this thing. The front headlights are bi-xenon HIDs. They're super good headlights. The headlights on the Jag, they were okay. They were really good when the high beams were on, but they weren't all that fantastic when it was just low beams. They aimed straight at the ground, and there was really no way around that, unfortunately. So that was frustrating. But the headlights on this aim out very far, and then high beams kick on and you can light up whatever you want to light up. The front fog lights are also really nice too. They're LEDs. They actually make a really big difference. On some cars, you turn the fog lights on, you don't know whether they're on or off. But this one, you definitely can see the difference in the light output. And I really like that they're a white LED instead of a more yellowish halogen bulb. Just cruise with your turn signal on, alright. So another thing also is the rear fog lights on this one. They're just little halogen bulbs down at the bottom corners of the bumper, but you really wouldn't think that would make a difference, but they really do. They're very nice light output. The ones on the Jaguar were extremely blinding. Did not like them at all. But these really aren't bad. They're bright, but of course they are fog lights, so you do expect them to be a little bit brighter. Why are we going 55 and a 70? This is ridiculous. So yeah, the lights on this are just really, really good. I like all the lights. The interior lights are very nice. It's a very calming and non-intrusive white light that lights up the gauges and the instrument cluster, the gear shift. Not the instrument cluster, the instrument panel down here, like where you have your climate controls and screen and stuff. So that really pretty much sums up all the pros we have for the car, which, as you can tell, are a lot. There are a ton of pros that we have for this car. Absolutely love it. On to just a few cons, and these cons are me being super picky. These really aren't deal breaker cons at all. But starting off, the seat bolsters on the bottom cushion of the driver and passenger seat, they are a tiny bit narrow, which is a little frustrating. For someone of wider stature like myself, it does get a little frustrating because it kind of starts to impede on your leg space, makes you feel a little cramped, but hopefully as time goes on, these bolsters will kind of soften up a little bit and not be as frustrating as they currently are, which they're really not that bad. Like I said, all these cons are me being very nitpicky. Next thing, sometimes the transmission and engine feel like they're not completely on the same page, like when you're taking off from a stoplight. They can be a little bit laggy on the power delivery. It kind of, like, you'll mash the gas, you see the revs come up, but the car doesn't really move. Maybe that's just the supercharger building up boost a little bit. I'm not really sure what the issue is with that, but it's not that big of a deal, honestly. You just, once the car decides to go, you start going and you're fine. The auto start stop system is a little strange on this thing. It does get very moody, shall we say. Wow, this car is absolutely ridiculous. I think you should go a lot slower. But anyway, like I was saying, auto start stop does get a little frustrating at times. My mom finds it a lot more frustrating than I do. It doesn't really bother me personally that bad, but it does bother her. She feels like it puts a major delay in between when she's able to take her foot off the brake and actually get moving in the car, which is understandable. I mean, she's not used to the lag there, which is completely understandable. Like I said, it doesn't bother me. Engine actually just kicked off right now. It does start up relatively quick. It's not the fastest thing to start, but it's not bad. And it's not really jerky either. I know some systems that I've driven, the cars can get a little jerky on startup, but this really doesn't, and it doesn't make a lot of starter noise either. It fires up very quickly, which is nice. And it helps save a little bit of gas too, so that's nice too. Another thing, and this is an actual concern we have with the car, the AC gets a little funky sometimes. And it kind of seems to be when the auto start stop system is actually enabled. I'm not 100% sure if that has anything to do with it or not. But the AC, sometimes you'll get in the car, it'll be blowing ice cold, and sometimes you'll get in the car and it'll be just blowing very warm and humid air. So that is a little bit frustrating and an issue of concern. We are probably going to get that looked at next time we take it up. So I will be sure to report back on that, and I'm sure we'll get a loaner out of it too, which I will do my best to make a video on. But again, I make no promises because my schedule is crazy. So I'm not really sure what's up with the AC. It's just there's no consistency to when it does or doesn't work. it just kind of decides on its own, I guess. And my last complaint I have, and again, everything but the AC is me being very nitpicky with the car. The stereo is not the most fantastic thing I've ever used. To be completely honest, it's not a bad stereo, but it doesn't have the bass punch like our F-150 and my Fusion does. But again, it's not the upgraded Meridian stereo, so I'm not expecting it to be up to the levels that the super high-end stereos that come on these cars are. So it is a little underwhelming as far as the stereo goes, but it's not bad. I mean, for what my mom uses the stereo for, it's plenty. I think it's fine too. If it were in my car, I would add a sub to it, but again, it's really not that big of a deal. But anyways, I guess that really pretty much wraps up what I was trying to get across on the Range Rover. So anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. If there's anything you guys want to see on the car, any questions you have, I know I have a request for a brochure and a window sticker video, but like I said, if there's anything you guys would like to see on the car, leave a comment below. I will do my best to get those requests fulfilled, and hope you guys have enjoyed, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.